Welcome! In this first part of the Flappy Bird series, we'll do some setting up. First, we need to import our assets. Next, we'll do some configuration in the project settings. And finally, we'll create our main game scene, which we will call World. I'll see you in there. I've created an empty project, and first, let's import our assets. I've included a link in the description which you can use to download them. And once you do, you'll have a zip folder inside your downloads. So just right click and extract. Once you do that, you can just drag and drop them inside Godot. But first, let's go back to Godot and take a look at our import settings. Because if you don't change your import settings and you just import them like that, they're gonna be imported as regular 2D textures. But our textures are pixel art, so we need to specify to Godot that we're using pixel art. To demonstrate this, you can click on the icon.png which you have inside your file system, drag it inside the scene, and if you zoom in, you can see that it's a bit blurry. The pixels aren't very clear. Let's click on icon.png, make sure it's selected. Go to the import tab, which is next to the scene tab, and change the preset to 2D pixel and click on re-import. As you can see, now the pixels are much more clear. This is what we need to use to import our assets. So let's go to preset again and set this as default for texture so that Godot uses this preset for every texture it imports. Now we can go back to downloads and drop our assets inside our project. Inside our assets folder, we have textures that we need. We have a font that we're going to use to count our score. And finally, we have some audio effects that we need. Okay, next, we need to go to the project settings to do some configuration. Here I'll go to Window, which is under display here, and I'm gonna set my display size to 480 by 854, which is a good size for mobile games. And I'll scroll a bit down and set my orientation to portrait instead of landscape. This will ensure that our game is displayed in the portrait mode when we export to a mobile device, which is important for our game because we're gonna be developing it for a portrait display. Next, I'll set my stretch mode to 2D and my aspect to keep, and this will ensure that my aspect ratio remains the same even if I resize my screen and even if I run my game on a device that has a different aspect ratio, a different size. And next, I'll go to quality, which is under rendering, and I'll turn on use pixel snap, which is a useful feature if you're making a pixel art game. And finally here, we want to go to pointing, which is under input devices, and turn on emulate touch from mouse. Okay, we're done here, so let's close and let's actually go to the scene tab and let's delete this icon that we used for demonstration purposes, and let's scroll back up, and as you can see, the blue line, which represents our camera, changed because we changed our display size. Finally, let's create our main game scene. To do that, let's go to the scene tab and let's click on 2D scene here, which will create a basic node 2D, which we will rename to World. Let's hit Ctrl+S to save this, and I'll just save it inside the res folder. And let's add a Sprite Node to display our background. I'll rename this to background and go to my assets, textures, find the background, drag it inside the texture field under my sprite, By default, it's centered. The offset is in the center, but let's change that. Go to offset, just unclick centered, and the offset will start from the top left. And it fits perfectly. You can zoom in and first turn on pixel snap, then try resizing it, and as you can see, the blue lines are just on top of our image, which means that it's perfectly fitting our display size. Let's save again, and we're done for this tutorial. Okay, that was some setting up to do. I know it's not very fun, but it's necessary in order to start making our game. And these settings will be different depending on the type of game you're trying to build, and that will come with experience and by making different kinds of games. For example, if we weren't making a pixel art game, some of the settings that we used would be different and things like that. So yeah, congratulations on starting this series. In the next section, we'll start building our player character. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.